Welcome back to Rare of Us Photos. Hope you're having a sensational morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you're watching this. Thank you to those subscribers that are brand new. Thank you to you existing subscribers that have been with me for a couple years now. We are the fastest growing Elvis channel on YouTube with 63,000 subscribers in a little over 2 years. Thanks to you, thanks to Elvis, the spirit of Elvis. Try to get your friends to like and subscribe, share this video, share all the videos around Facebook. I know a lot of y'all do, like Joanna Black is one that shares a lot of videos quite often. I am on Facebook as well here and there. I'm starting to be on there and share some of these videos. And then TikTok as well, Rare of Us Photos on TikTok. I think Facebook's now called Joe Sins Rare of Us Photos. This channel is probably going to change that as well, but we will see. And thanks for the super thanks that you've left me lately. I appreciate that. Waiting for some books to come from Derry Matera. We'll start reading maybe some of his books, possibly on this channel. A lot of y'all want me to do that. So I will follow the pulse of what y'all want. Having a lot of fun on this channel lately, and also this very serious stuff. We're going to be reading from the Lisa, Marie Presley, Riley Keough, From Here to the Great Unknown. Yeah. Hey, and just a small little update. I did talk to Bridget Cruz the other day, and she's spoken with Desiree Presley, which is great. Because obviously we know that Bridget's in the know. Bridget was there with Priscilla for a couple of years and knows everything that there is to know about any potential children, all that other stuff. You know, I'm going to bring her on the channel and let her speak for herself, but she speaks highly of Desiree, by the way. So that's something that I just thought I'd share. Here we go. Let's get to reading. Japan was my brother's favorite country. When Ben and I were on the train to Kyoto one day, he said to me, half joking and kind of coyly, "It's so hard because when I do something new, I get really good at it so fast that it becomes uninspiring." Nothing kept his interest long because when he learned to do something, he actually would be good at it. He was one of those people who could annoyingly be great at everything. But he hadn't found the one thing that really grabbed him. See, he'd wanted to play guitar for a living. He'd taken business courses. He trained to be a sushi chef. Even got a chef's knife tattooed on one arm, but nothing ever stuck. He was really smart, way more academic than I was, and in his mid-20s, he began to feel the pressure to make a choice. I was always trying to help him figure out what to do with his life. You know, you can move to Hawaii and fish, I'd say, another passion of his. We'd send each other links to houses on Redfin that he might buy one day, and his dream was to live a simpler life somewhere. Hawaii or Japan were his top choices. Now, when the conversations would progress, he'd always hit his reality. You know what that reality was? I can't leave Mom. He, like the rest of his siblings, was privy to the tremendously deep sadness and loneliness of her. How she ended up pushing away virtually everyone and everything she loved and was very much alone. And he'd given himself the responsibility of never leaving her side. Very sad. If you think about it, you know. Let's continue. In May 2018, I went to Tokyo to film a movie for Netflix called Earthquake Bird, and Ben came with me. Now, initially, we stayed at the Park Hyatt, the hotel that features in Lost in Translation. Now, I'm not much of a drinker, but on my 29th birthday, I got way too intoxicated. Now, Riley says, I can't handle my alcohol, and I threw up over the side of the hotel. I could hear my parents' voices in my head telling me what a lightweight I was. I probably only had 3 drinks. In a family of pirates, that's not necessarily a bad thing to be. My family took pride in their piracy, and they really lived up to it. But as my mother once said when I claimed that I was hardcore, "Oh, Pookie, you are so not hardcore." The next week, we found an apartment to live in. Now, Ben and I had the most beautiful time in Japan. We would wake up every day, and we'd head to the sauna or the steam room. Then we'd take a walk to get smoothies and just keep wandering. I had some yellow Nikes I wore around the city that he was obsessed with. See, he never wanted anything I had other than those shoes. I didn't have too much to do in the movie, so there was time. I had an assistant, Shusaku, and he and Ben became best friends. When I didn't have to work, the two of them would run around the city together. Kind of like you're hearing up there. That's not always children that you hear up there. Remember, we have 9 cats and a dog, so it's pretty crazy. Okay, so Ben and Shusaku became best friends. When I did have to work, the two of them would run around the city together. Tokyo is a beautiful place for ceramics, so we went to ceramics classes, all 3 of us. We made so many pots and bowls and cups, Shu translating for us. Ben was a foodie. We'd go out to all these incredible omakase restaurants, and he would eat everything and anything, just like his grandfather. Now, it doesn't say that in the book, but that's obviously my, observation, and I know y'all are probably thinking it as well. I just said it out loud for all of us. There were dishes that I would not eat, sea urchin, for example. But with the chef right there, I didn't want to be rude, so I'd wait for the chef to look away and then slip whatever it was that I couldn't stomach to Ben. Despite Ben being so into the best food, one of his favorite things to eat were rice balls from 7-Eleven. In fairness, the food at 7-Elevens in Japan is very good. Now, we'd take the rice balls to Zuchi Beach, a surfer beach about an hour south of the city. We'd climb the mountains to a shrine, me and my bright yellow Nike sneakers, banana shoes, as Ben called them, and eat the rice balls. Ben would give me a hard time about the shoes every day. "Did you get my banana shoes yet?" he'd ask repeatedly, and I promised over and over and over again that I'd get him a pair. For a while, Ben got heavily into making jewelry. A few weeks after I started dating the man who would become my husband, Ben Smith Peterson, we were all in Ireland together. Ben told Ben, see, my mom later christened the two, Ben and Big Ben, to differentiate, that it was obvious that he was going to propose to me. So I guess Ben must be her husband, because it says Ben told Ben. Okay, we were children, and we were clearly going to be together, and that he'd make a ring. A few weeks later, Big Ben was in Australia visiting his mom. No, I guess that's not written right. So Big Ben has to be her husband, and Ben has to be a brother, because it says Ben told Ben that it was obvious that he was going to. Oh, okay. So Ben did tell Big Ben. Okay, so sorry, I just want to differentiate in case we get a bunch of Bens and Big Bens and Benny Bens and Benjamins and Ben Jr. and Ben Sr. and all that stuff. Reading a book to y'all is enjoyable, but it's an adventure trying to communicate it. All right. A few weeks later, Big Ben was in Australia visiting his mom. She mentioned that she had some diamonds that she'd taken out of her great-grandmother's ring. She'd intended to repurpose them into something for herself, but she gave him one of them. Back in the States, Ben found a vintage ring with no setting and set the diamond for Big Ben. Big Ben then attached the ring to our dog and told me to call him over, and that's how he, technically the dog, proposed. I know I explained it to y'all, but it's still confusing. She could have just said my brother, but I think she's trying to be clever. Back in LA, while trying to look after our mother, Ben's own addiction to drinking was growing. And as it grew, so did his depression. Though he suffered from anxiety, sober or not, when he wasn't drinking, he was often fine. His depression didn't seem dangerous. He would sometimes go on a bender, and he would sometimes do substances. Take this for a week, take that for a week, and feel the come down. But after a few days away from it, he was always back to normal. My mom was such a powerful person that whatever she was doing really affected all of us. Our lives were dictated by the tone she was setting, and that tone became very heavy and hopeless. Our mom, the queen, the fiercest of family leaders, had fallen down. I had mistakenly thought that she was so strong-minded that nothing could ever truly hobble her. But of course it could. Enough pain can hobble anyone. See, she'd been addicted to substances for the better part of a decade now. And the substances created a sense of hopelessness, that permeated everything. She stopped wanting to do anything. She felt like her life was over, and she'd say, I've got nothing. I have no husband. I have no friends. I have no life. She was bottoming out. Ben was a mama's boy, through and through, and he couldn't handle his mama being in pain. They were so close, like Elvis and Gladys. One inextricably tied to the rise and fall of the other, and seeing each other in pain was impossibly hard for them. You see, it wrecked him. What had once felt like a perfect childhood to us gave way to what felt like a nightmare to him. It wrecked him. Like many in our family, substances were where Ben found relief, and his addictions grew worse. Sometimes I think, well, it doesn't seem like he's drinking that much more than other friends of mine. In fact, from that standpoint, he was not even the one I was most concerned about. We were still very tight, but he didn't tell me how bad he was really feeling. One day he told my mom that he didn't think that he was mentally okay. But she didn't tell me. And you wouldn't have known unless he told you. We were all very close. Forever cuddling, curled up in bed together. So when it got dark, how could it not affect all of us? All our lives, my mother had been leading the way, and none of us could get used to her not having her usual strength. The substances that she stayed on after rehab were dimming her light. The following year, my mom was able to move into her own house in Calabasas, and my brother and sisters moved in with her. I swear that house was haunted. It felt cursed. Or maybe it was how powerful my mother's moods had become. She wouldn't go a few days without seeing me, but I didn't want to be there. The house felt so heavy. My brother could feel it. Anyone who went there could feel it. Ben finally decided he was drinking too much, so my mom sent him to rehab. But on his return, he was still stuck in that terrible house, watching his mother struggle. She was not truly sober. She was taking substances, but she was also getting influenced on the post-rehab cocktail. We would fight about it all of the time. See, and she would get vicious, protecting her addiction. Otherwise, she would just sleep on the couch all day. It was incredibly hard for my brother to watch. Then she had a seizure. Now, who of y'all that are out there, I gotta plug my phone in, realized that she'd had a seizure? I wasn't aware of that. I don't remember any news, and of course, there probably wouldn't be any news on it because when you're famous, when you have the money to protect the news, you got publicists that are great about killing stories. Hence Priscilla, right? Her publicist. All right, let's continue. My brother and her assistant were home with her at the time. Ben stayed with her until the paramedics arrived. Well, I showed up that night to take care of my sisters. Mom was in the hospital. Ben was sitting on the couch in silence. Are you okay? I asked. Yep, he said. And though he was completely checked out, as though he was completely checked out, I had my attention on the twins. They had just seen the paramedics wheel their mother out, and they were very upset. So I wasn't able to check on my brother. So I gotta just stop for just a second, and we'll read more. Riley's trying to rationalize the feeling that she has, which you always have that when somebody loses their life or takes their life. What could I have done? I should have done more. Most of us have been there. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with how she's writing this. I feel bad for her. It's not her responsibility. I mean, it is. It is in a sense to love and nurture and protect. But sometimes things get so heavy, you've got to take steps away. You got to take a step away from it. And that's what she was trying to do during that time. And all those years that had gone by, so immersed in it, and she's trying to live a healthy life herself. Okay, let's continue. After the seizure, my mother realized she couldn't do this anymore. Though she remained on mood stabilizers, she did manage to truly sober up. One day she said to me, "That's enough. I really need to change my life." She had been very chastened by the seizure. In fact, she had a deep phobia about them. Who wouldn't? One time in a mall in Florida, when I was around 7 years old, a man was having a very violent seizure on the floor, and my mother couldn't shake the image of it for months and eventually had to get therapy about it. When she told me that she'd had enough, I remember thinking, finally, her addiction was going to be gone. I really felt like it was. But I noticed that my brother's disposition changed after the seizure. He seemed quieter and was often alone in the room. I remember feeling like I wanted to check on him more than usual because I knew that seeing his mother have a seizure would have been unbearable for him. That goes with something that, talking to Bridget Cruz, Bridget Cruz, I mean, you probably seen on there's another Elvis channel she actually has talked to in the past. I don't know whether she's talking to her anymore. I don't even know whether that channel was supposed to share some of the stuff that was shared, but I think so, probably. Bridget, to me, seems to be a well-adjusted person that got caught up in the whole Priscilla thing and Priscilla trying to destroy her. But she was privy to a lot of messages, a lot of communications, a lot of information about this. And I can confirm that from Bridget, Lisa, some personal stuff that had gone on with Lisa, and I don't think it's going to be anything in this book, really, really destroyed Ben. So the way Riley's writing this about how connected they were, like Elvis and Gladys, to me rings completely truthful. And so you know where we're heading. Most, if you're a new Elvis fan, maybe you don't, or a new Lisa Marie Presley fan, you don't know where this is heading, but most of us do. All right, let's continue reading. We're going to get through probably the rest of this chapter, hopefully. That haunted house in Calabasas had developed a minor mold problem, so my mom, Ben, and my sisters were staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel while the problem was remediated. My mom was badly allergic to mold. Yeah, I think we all are. Any y'all out there not allergic to mold? Uh, During their stay, Ben went back to the house one night to throw a birthday party for his girlfriend. I don't know if I can read this. It's kind of. I know we're kind of getting closer to the end of this book, but I thought, anyways. So we're hearing the full real story, not just what was put out, the publicized story. Ben went back to the house one night to throw a birthday party for his girlfriend. So they were all staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel at that time, and Ben goes back to the house. My mom and Ben were texting back and forth that night. She had picked up something about his mindset, something that worried her. Are you coming back tomorrow? Come home, she wrote. At the house, the party went into the small hours. Everyone was happily hanging out downstairs. Ben went upstairs around 3:30 a.m. Come home, she wrote. He said he was just going to go get a beer. That is the end of that chapter. But I'm going to read more. Okay? I promise y'all some longer videos, and we're going to do that. Some of y'all like to listen and listen while you're driving or cleaning. And I don't want to leave you hanging on a cliff note right there. No one in the house heard what happened. I can't say the word, but we know how it ended for Ben, right? No one heard that sound. It took almost an hour for people to realize that Ben hadn't returned. Upstairs, they found the door was locked. They had to break in. That was Riley. That was all Riley. Now we go to Lisa. When I was 13, I had a best friend at school named Brian. One day I remember coming to school and everybody was being weird. They called us into a room and told us that Brian had passed away from sniffing glue. We were freaking out, so they took us for a walk to get our attention outward. But they'd lied to us. I remember saying to a teacher on that walk, how did he really do it? The teacher said, same way that Ben passed away. That's what the teacher said. People have a misconception about someone taking their own life. I always thought if someone is talking about it, they won't do it. I'm going to keep reading, but to share, I'm just curious if y'all have experienced this in your life. And if you are, I feel truly terrible for you. Growing up, one of my brothers always talked about doing it. One of my older brothers. I'm the youngest of all the siblings anyways. He never did it. My uncle did it. Vietnam veteran. But just the fear that it would put into my parents. So, where Lisa says, I always thought that if someone is talking about doing it, they won't do it. It's a cry for help, right? Cry for attention. But if it's happened to you, I truly am sorry. It's terrible. Terrible to lose anybody. And terrible to lose anybody that way. One of my employees a few years back or last year did it. And it makes you go, what could I have done? Should I have done something different? Should I have said something different? How could I have helped more? Okay, moving on. It was 5:30 a.m., July 12th, 2020. My phone was ringing. Half awake, startled, I said to my husband, Christy's calling me. Something's wrong. If my mom's assistant was calling me that early, it had to be serious. Oh God, something happened to Mom, I thought. My husband said, pick it up. My heart started beating so hard, I could feel the blood in my ears, and I picked up. Christy's telling Riley what happened. I can't repeat it because YouTube doesn't like that sort of language. But basically, she was repeating it over and over and over again, just hysterically. I couldn't take it in. I could hear her saying it, but I couldn't absorb the words. The finality of that statement. I was suddenly filled with the most profoundly painful thought. This is real, and there's nothing I can do. Time started to stretch or quicken. I couldn't tell. But my next thought was that I was about to have to tell my mom that the second man she loved the most in the world was gone. I don't remember getting off the phone. Somehow we got into the car, and I was drinking a yellow Gatorade, and I lit a cigarette. My husband was at the wheel. That drive felt like it lasted 7 years. And that's all I remember about that drive. A drink, a cigarette, and an eternity. My mother was asleep in her hotel room. She slept with a white noise machine, which was the only way she could get any rest. I ran to her suite and started pounding on the door. Nothing. After a few minutes, I called the hotel lobby and begged them to let me into her room. The security guy came and I started freaking out. I have to get in there right now. We can't let you in there, he said. Please, please, let me in, please. You have to. I need to talk to my mom. It's an emergency. We can't let you in without her approving it, he said. I started pounding even harder on the door, and the thought flashed through my head, this will be the end of her life when I tell her this. I already knew, clear as day, in those moments, banging on her door, that any time I got with her after, what was about to happen would be a gift, a bonus. I couldn't imagine her living without my brother. So you have to understand, for people like, well, why wouldn't the hotel guy just let her in? And why didn't she just tell the hotel guy what happened? Now, if she would have said something, it would have been leaked all over the press immediately. I wonder if she's going to tell the guy. Okay, finally, I heard my mom's footsteps approaching. The door opened and she was half asleep. What's going on? She said. I took a breath. Bin in the head, I said. I tried to say it calmly. What a dang nightmare. What a living nightmare to go through stuff like that. Now, y'all know I lost my son. Not through that, but through horrific doctoring and care at Vanderbilt. In 2017. Losing your child, hearing that your child was going to pass away or pass away, as some of y'all know, there's no words to describe the finality, the starkness, the blackness, the days after, unless you've been through it. And I hope y'all never go through it. I really do. And I'm sorry that Lisa had to go through it, and Riley, the survivors. She didn't understand what I'd said. Nothing registered on her face. I said it again, nothing. We just kind of looked at each other. Then she started grabbing her things and said, I need to go to him now. She went into the room where my sisters were sleeping. I have to go, she said. Something's happened to Bin. They asked if he was going to be okay. No, she said. They immediately started crying, but we had to leave them with the babysitter. We couldn't stay. Then I had to tell my father. So they were 10, approximately. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's probably the right move. I mean, you think probably the right move, not to take them to the house. Um, just to leave them alone. That's difficult. I mean, all right, here we go. What's the right move there, right? I mean, it's the right move for them, but would it be the right move for us? Would we have just taken our children along and had somebody meet us there and keep them away from the scene or whatever, or take them to a friend's house, something besides leaving them at the hotel? Um, then I had to tell my father. That's right. He was in Oregon. I barely remember the call. I think I said the same thing I've been told. Ben in the head. He said, "What?" It didn't make any sense to any of us. My father immediately drove to the Portland airport and flew to LA. Now, we got in the car and drove from the hotel in Beverly Hills back to her house in Calabasas. I was lying across the back seat, my body in deep panic. I couldn't breathe. The car eternity returned. Then I could hear myself breathing, and it sounded so loud. We pulled up to my mom's house, and the police had already barricaded it off with yellow caution tape. It was a crime scene now. We went up to his room. There were police everywhere. In every room and hallway, every part of the house. A police officer stood in front of his door. My mother wanted to go in there and see him, but the officer wouldn't let us. So we went into my mom's room and had to wait. Riley says I had to lie on the floor. I couldn't hold my body up. Mom and I sat on the floor together. It was too painful to cry. I distinctly remember thinking, I've never seen this in a movie. When someone passes away, how it's too painful to cry. And when you do eventually cry, it's a different cry. It feels like something deeper than your emotions is crying out, and it feels like it's never going to end. Some kind of terrifying, bottomless pain. We had to wait about 2 or 3 hours while the police investigated to make sure that there was no foul play, and we barely spoke. Finally, one of the officers said, "We don't typically do this, but we'll let you see him." My mother waited at the bottom of the stairs desperately. About 30 minutes later, they rolled him in front of us and unzipped the body bag. His face was perfectly intact, beautiful somehow. He had bruises under his eyes and what looked like wine stains on his mouth. He had this little smile on his face. My mom grabbed his head and she said, "What did you do, Benjamin? What did you do?" She said it as though he could hear her. And this was the first time that she cried. She had red all over her hands from holding the back of his head. Then she had it all over her face. She kissed his forehead and held her face to his and cried, and I was in shock. I left my body entirely, said Riley. I think I was crying, but I don't know. I felt like I was being piloted by some other force, and I was afraid to touch him. I put my hand on the bag around his chest. I wished that I'd hugged him right there one more time. Then they zipped up the bag and took him outside. We followed, and they loaded him into the back of a car and slammed the doors. And then we just sat there as they drove away. Just like that. I don't really know how else to describe watching my little brother my parents' only son, being driven away in that van forever. The van just drives away and you just watch it go. My father moved into my mother's new rental house with us the next day. For 2 weeks, I couldn't really even remember how to talk. Okay, so that's a long time. 2 weeks. Grief is grief. It's a horrific thing. Usually you have to be strong for somebody. You've got to make arrangements. You've got to have visitations. You have to go through the process. And, the next section that we're going to read, obviously, y'all know that they didn't have, I don't think they had that process. So for 2 weeks, she couldn't even remember how to talk. I could understand what words were, but I couldn't understand how to get them from my thoughts to my lips. People would talk to me, but my mouth wouldn't work. I came to understand how people go mute through trauma. You see, it was July, just a few months into the COVID-19 lockdown, so added to the grief was the terror that we all felt that we might contract the illness, which at the time, there was a lot of people losing their lives. Everyone wanted to come see us, but we had to isolate, which only made everything more surreal. I felt like I'd also passed away. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I saw Ben's face in everything, everywhere. I couldn't stand up for very long, so I would just lie down most of the time. I felt like I weighed 1,000 pounds. Now, a few friends would break the COVID protocol and come over and give me baths and shave my legs. All I could manage to do was lie on the floor in the sun. That's where we're going to stop. Sounds like the grief of losing a husband or a wife of 50 years. Now, we know, Riley said it many times, that her and Ben were close. And this isn't just a normal loss like a car accident. Old age, heart attack, stuff like that. This hits somebody deeper to know that somebody, in a sense, did this to you, not just to them. That's the trauma that comes with a life ended that way. And, unless somebody's experienced it, which I've asked y'all, I hope y'all haven't, but if you have, unless somebody's experienced that, I don't think you can completely understand maybe the length of time it takes. Especially if you have a real love for somebody, not just a casual friend. My older son from California just experienced this twice in his young life. 2 friends, and maybe he'll never see this video because I make so many videos, but someday when I'm gone, maybe he'll watch all of these, and I feel horrible for him that he had to experience that. It put him in a deep depression for a while, and he did get through it, and he did come to understand it more. And then it happened again to him, to one of his coworkers that, and it's sad. You don't want people to go through this, but we know nobody gets out of this alive. We all have traumas to experience. We all have our crosses to bear. Anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed the reading, even if it wasn't the most happy of readings. It's an education on perhaps what Riley has gone through, what Lisa went through, perhaps what led to her passing, and we know it did. We know that's a big part of it. To maybe try to find some understanding and forgiveness, right? Well, this is Rare Photos, TCB, TLC. Take care of yourselves. I hope nobody ever feels their life is that bad or they're in that much pain. That's the path they have to take. Um, I don't know whether Ben left a note. I don't know if that makes it any better, right? Um, anyhow, until next time. Hopefully you share this video around. Um, maybe it helps somebody. Maybe it helps somebody feel not so alone. And if you made it this far, then MITTE, you are not alone. All right, till next time.